Hey there, fellow TV survivors. Before you scroll past, what if I told you there was a show about a dude named Bigfoot who raised a feral child in the forest? Or a Saturday morning series with a talking VW Beetle that transformed into a superhero dune buggy? The 70s were wild, people. Today, we're diving into 9 forgotten live-action shows that explain why Gen X turned out the way we did. Grab your tang, hit that subscribe button, and let's time travel back to when network execs clearly said yes to everything. Before streaming, before DVDs, heck, before most of us had VCRs, there was appointment television. And for many of us Gen X girls and boys, Sunday nights meant one thing: watching teen heartthrobs Parker Stevenson and Sean Cassidy solve mysteries as the Hardy Boys, alternating weeks with Pamela Sue Martin as Nancy Drew. Premiering in 1977 on ABC, this show was basically CSI Teen Idol Edition. Sean Cassidy wasn't just solving mysteries. He was also topping the music charts with Da Do Ron Ron and Hey Deanie. The guy was the total 70s package. Feathered hair, high-waisted jeans and all. The show started with the brilliant idea of alternating between Hardy Boys episodes one week and Nancy Drew the next. But when ratings showed the Hardy Boys pulling ahead, they sidelined Nancy for more teen boy detective action. Classic 70s network thinking. Girls will watch boys, but boys won't watch girls. How many of you had Parker or Sean plastered on your bedroom walls? Don't lie, we know the truth. The real mystery was how the producers squeezed so many wide-collared shirts and polyester jackets into one show. If you watch it now, you might solve the case of why our parents' family photos look so cringy.
Does you have any way of knowing if anything is missing?
I just found a lot of open drawers and scattered papers, but I lifted a fingerprint off the top of the filing cabinet.
Takes a specialist to lift fingerprint.
The show even featured future stars like Jamie Lee Curtis in Mystery of the Fallen Angels and Melanie Griffith in The Mystery of the Hollywood Phantom, both before they became household names. And let's not forget when Nancy Drew suddenly transformed into a completely different person in Season 3 when Pamela Sue Martin left and was replaced by Janet Louise Johnson. Kids today don't know the trauma of unexplained cast changes. If you thought teen detectives taking on international jewel thieves and criminal masterminds was a stretch, wait until you hear about the next show that literally launched its characters into space by accident. Speaking of launches, ever accidentally hit the launch button instead of the lunch button? No. Well, Bob Denver did. After playing Gilligan and stranding himself on an island, he apparently decided being lost in the entire universe was the logical next career move. Far Out Space Nuts, created by the legendary Sid and Marty Krofft, premiered in 1975 and gave us Bob Denver and Chuck McCann as NASA maintenance workers who accidentally hit the launch button, thinking it was lunch, and end up careening through space. This is the kind of premise that makes you wonder if TV writers in the 70s were paid by the bong hit. The show lasted just 15 episodes, but that was enough time for our hapless heroes to encounter alien princesses, space cowboys, and even a creature named Honk who communicated only through, you guessed it, honking. Revolutionary dialogue writing there, folks. The Krofft brothers never met a concept too bizarre to greenlight. These were the same guys who brought us HR Puffinstuff and Land of the Lost. So their approach to sci-fi was basically throw psychedelic colors at the screen and see what sticks. Remember those NASA jumpsuits they wore? Every kid wanted one, but had to settle for pajamas with feet in them. How many of you watched this Saturday morning while eating a bowl of Captain Crunch so sugary it would tear the roof of your mouth to shreds? The things we endured for entertainment. Speaking of strange space adventures, our next show actually predated the more famous movie franchise with a similar name and featured a gorilla in a derby hat. You can't make this stuff up. No, not those Ghostbusters. Before Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd strapped on proton packs, we had Forrest Tucker, Larry Storch, and a guy in a gorilla suit chasing ghosts in a show so low budget that their ghost detection equipment looked like it came from Radio Shack's clearance bin. Premiering in 1975, Filmation's The Ghostbusters was a live-action Saturday morning show about 2 detectives and their gorilla assistant named Tracy. Yes, a gorilla named Tracy. The 70s were a simpler time, when no one questioned why a gorilla was wearing clothes and helping solve supernatural mysteries. The detectives would receive their mission instructions via a tape recorder that self-destructed after playing. Straight up ripping off Mission Impossible, but with a budget that might have barely covered craft services for one day of that show. Their car was called the Ghost Buggy, or GB for short, which had eyes, could talk, and was clearly just a dressed-up Model T Ford. Each week, our heroes would confront laughably obvious guys in bedsheets or actors in rubber masks.
These trips from the beyond are wearying. But perhaps this time I, Dr. Frankenstein, will find what I've been searching for centuries. Come. Now this way, you oaf! That is why we must keep coming back in order to find the one thing I need to make you capable of following orders. Come. I know where there is a deserted castle.
The special effect made Land of the Lost look like Avatar. But we didn't care. We were kids with nothing better to do on Saturday mornings. The best part? When the actual Ghostbusters movie came out in 1984, Filmation was like, hey, that's our name, and launched their own animated series to compete with the real Ghostbusters. It was the ghost hunting showdown absolutely no one asked for. If you thought ghost hunting with a gorilla was peak 70s weirdness, our next show took alien encounters to new heights with a show that was actually too sophisticated for American audiences at the time. While American kids were watching gorillas chase ghosts, British television was serving up something far more sophisticated with UFO. Created by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, the minds behind Thunderbirds, this 1970 series made its way to American TV and blew the minds of kids lucky enough to catch it. Set in the distant future of 1980, UFO centered on a secret organization called Shadow, Supreme Headquarters Alien Defense Organization, defending Earth against purple-haired aliens trying to harvest human organs. Because in the 70s, even our aliens had fabulous hair. The show featured Ed Bishop as Commander Ed Straker, rocking a blonde helmet-like hairstyle and running Shadow from a film studio that was just a front for their real operation. The female moon base officers wore silver cat suits and purple wigs because, well, why not? It was the 70s vision of the 80s, which is about as accurate as the Jetsons is to our current reality. The model work and special effects were genuinely impressive for the time. Those interceptor spacecraft launching from the moon base, all miniatures, all meticulously crafted. No CGI, kids, just pure craftsmanship and creativity. What made UFO stand out was that it dealt with adult themes like divorce, death, and the moral implications of fighting an alien threat. Heavy stuff sandwiched between toy commercials on Saturday mornings. How many of you stayed up late to catch this show when it aired in syndication, feeling like you were watching something you shouldn't be? For its time, the show was too mature for kids.
Just exactly what is that supposed to mean?
Too weird for adults, and too British for Americans. A perfect trifecta for cult status. And speaking of space adventures that didn't quite make the mainstream cut, our next show tried to turn Space Camp into an action series. If you took the facts of life, shot it into space, and added Jonathan Harris from Lost in Space as the headmaster, you'd get Space Academy. Premiering in 1977, the same year as Star Wars, this Filmation series tried to capitalize on the space craze while keeping things educational-ish. Set in the year 3732, the show followed a group of gifted teens attending a school on an asteroid, learning to be space explorers while having suspiciously Earth-like teenage problems. The Academy was led by Commander Gampu, played by Jonathan Harris, who basically recycled his Dr. Smith character, but made him less likely to yell, "Oh, the pain!" The Space Academy team included Chris, the natural leader, Laura, his sister with telepathic and telekinetic powers, because every 70s kids show needed someone with mental powers, Tigar, the super strong medical student, Paul, the resident genius, Adrian, the orphan, and Loki, a telepathic 7-year-old with a bleached bowl cut that would make Eminem jealous. They traveled around in these little shuttles called Seekers that looked like flying hot dogs with windows. The special effects were, well, let's just say George Lucas wasn't losing sleep over the competition. What's fascinating is that Space Academy premiered just months after Star Wars hit theaters, but was clearly developed before anyone knew what a cultural phenomenon Lucas's film would become. It's like watching the last gasp of the old sci-fi aesthetic before Star Wars changed everything. Did any of you join the Young Astronauts program in elementary school after watching shows like this? Raise your hand if you asked for a telescope for Christmas, but ended up using it exactly twice. While Space Academy was teaching kids about space, our next show was teaching them that any junky car could become a superhero vehicle with a little imagination and a lot of 70s special effects. Before Kit from Knight Rider was the coolest car on television, we had Schlepp Car. Part of ABC's The Croft Super Show, Wonderbug was about 3 teenagers who find an old dune buggy at a junkyard. Because in the 70s, junkyards were apparently the hottest hangout spots for teens. The rusty bucket of bolts had a magical horn that, when honked, transformed the car into Wonderbug, a sentient, talking dune buggy with bug-eyed headlights and a red hood that looked like a superhero cape. The transformation sequence was basically just cut into a slightly less junky dune buggy with some decorations slapped on it. That 70s special effect budget strikes again. The 3 teens, Barry, CC, and Susan, would ride around in Wonderbug solving crimes and getting into adventures. Wonderbug could fly, talk with a goofy voice, and do pretty much anything the plot required, except look convincing. The show was essentially Herbie the Love Bug meets Scooby-Doo, but with even less believable scenarios. And we ate it up every Saturday morning while wearing our cereal box decoder rings. What made Wonderbug special was how it convinced a generation of kids that their parents' beat-up station wagons might secretly be magical. And how many of you tried honking your family car's horn in a special pattern, hoping it would transform into something cooler? Come on, admit it. If a magical talking car wasn't wild enough for your Saturday morning viewing, our next show combined the legends of Bigfoot and Tarzan into one of the strangest action series ever made. If you've ever thought, you know what Tarzan needs? To be raised by Bigfoot instead of apes, then congratulations. You think like a 70s TV executive. Another segment from the Croft Super Show that later got its own series, Bigfoot and Wildboy, premiered in 1977 and gave us the buddy duo absolutely no one asked for. The premise: Bigfoot, played by 6'7" actor Ray Young in a furry suit and facial prosthetics, finds and raises a boy who survived a plane crash in the Pacific Northwest wilderness. They named this feral child Wildboy because creativity and naming wasn't the show's strong suit. Together, this dynamic duo protected the wilderness from all manner of threats: evil scientists, alien invaders, and criminals who, for some reason, chose to conduct their operations deep in Bigfoot territory. The show was basically the $6 Million Man Bigfoot episodes stretched into a series, but with a budget that might have covered lunch for Lee Majors. Bigfoot had super strength and could make mighty jumps, shown through hilariously obvious trampoline stunts, while Wildboy brought, his ability to wear a loincloth in the Pacific Northwest without getting hypothermia. Their chemistry was roughly on par with a nature documentary where the animals never actually interact. The show moved from Saturday mornings to Sunday mornings for its second and final season. TV's way of saying we've given up. But for those of us who caught it, Bigfoot and Wildboy represented the perfect storm of 70s weirdness. Cryptids, environmental messages, and questionable special effects. Be honest. Did any of you go camping in the woods after watching this show and try to find Bigfoot? I know I did, armed with nothing but a flashlight with dying batteries and a bag of beef jerky as bait. While Bigfoot was protecting the wilderness of the 1970s, our next show was imagining what would happen after humanity trashed the planet in a post-apocalyptic future. Long before The Walking Dead made post-apocalyptic TV mainstream, Ark II gave Saturday morning viewers a surprisingly bleak vision of the future. Premiering in 1976, this Filmation live-action series was set in the 25th century, after humanity had polluted the Earth to near uninhabitability. The 70s really knew how to keep kids' entertainment light and cheerful, didn't they? The show centered on a group of scientists who traveled the wasteland in their high-tech RV called the Ark II, bringing science and enlightenment to the scattered survivors of civilization. The crew consisted of Jonah, no relation to the biblical whale enthusiast, Ruth, Samuel, and, because it was the 70s, a talking chimpanzee named Adam who wore a jumpsuit. Every 70s sci-fi show apparently had a mandatory animal sidekick clause in its contract. The Ark II vehicle itself was a real custom-built vehicle that reportedly cost $100,000 to create, which was probably close to the entire budget for the show's 15 episodes. The crew also had a cool jetpack, the Jet Jumper, and an all-terrain vehicle named the Roamer that looked like a dune buggy's slightly more respectable cousin. What made Ark II fascinating was its earnest environmental message. While most shows just wanted to sell toys, this one was out here telling kids, hey, maybe don't destroy the planet, okay? Each episode would end with a conservation message. Captain Planet a full 14 years before Captain Planet. Did anyone else have apocalyptic nightmares after watching this supposedly kid-friendly show? Or was that just me? Raise your hand if you started recycling aluminum cans after watching Ark II. The 70s, scaring kids into environmentalism since 1976. Our final forgotten gem combined teen detectives with possibly the most convoluted acronym in television history. If you took the monkeys, made them crime fighters, and added in some supernatural abilities, you'd get the kids from Caper. This 1976 NBC show gave us what might be the most strained acronym in TV history: Civilian Authority for the Protection of Everybody. Regardless, someone worked overtime to make that spell Caper. The kids were 4 teenagers: PT, Bugs, Doomsday, and Doc, who worked for the police department solving crimes while occasionally breaking into song. Because nothing says serious crime fighting like impromptu musical numbers. The show was created by Romeo Muller, who wrote most of the Rankin Bass holiday specials, which explains absolutely nothing about why this show existed. Each kid had a special ability. PT had super strength when he smelled certain flowers. Bugs could hear sounds from far away. Doomsday could predict when disasters would occur by hiccuping. And Doc was just smart. Apparently, they ran out of weird powers by the time they got to him. They drove around in a customized van, because every 70s detective show required a custom vehicle, and used gadgets like Vika, Voice Evolutionary Code Analyzer, a talking computer that predated Siri by about 35 years. The show tried to capitalize on both the success of cop shows and teen idol worship, resulting in a bizarre hybrid that lasted just 1 season. It was like someone in a network meeting said, "What if we combined Starsky and Hutch with the Partridge Family?" And nobody had the courage to say no. Did any of you form neighborhood detective agencies after watching this show? Or try to develop your own weird supernatural abilities? The 70s really convinced an entire generation of kids that we were just one random flower sniff away from having superpowers. So there you have it. 9 forgotten shows that explain why Gen X grew up, well, the way we did. Watching gorillas hunt ghosts, talking cars fight crime, and post-apocalyptic scientists lecture us about pollution, all before lunchtime on Saturday. The 70s were a wild time when network executives would greenlight literally anything. Child labor laws were apparently suggestions, and special effects budgets could be measured in pocket change. But you know what? There was something pure about these weird, low-budget adventures that today's CGI spectacles just can't capture. If you remember rushing home to catch any of these shows, drop a TV emoji in the comments. And if I missed your favorite forgotten 70s gem, let me know what it was. We might have to do a part 2 for this video. Hit that subscribe button if you want more trips down nostalgia lane. Next time, we might dig into those bizarre public service announcements that traumatized us between cartoon episodes. You know, the ones that taught us not to hide in abandoned refrigerators or take candy from strangers in panel vans. Until then, stay weird, stay nostalgic, and remember, we survived some truly bizarre television, and that's what made us who we are. Peace out.